Hello, everybody. This is Band 2, and we're going to be looking at the chart of Hunter Biden in this. And I've entitled this "The New World Order," and Hunter is leading it. Also, it's March 22nd, 2022, and we're going to just touch on the self-anointed vaccine queen, SarahBeth Hartlage. And if you don't know who she is, don't worry. I didn't know either until a few days ago. So we're going to take a look at a deeper look at the people, places, and events as we are winding down this one period of time and entering into another one ahead of the end of the cross of planning in 2027, which of course I'll get to. But just a look at the Bidens, and the Biden family sort of represents to the split we're seeing in the wider collective. So we have some people seeing what's going on, the free thinkers, if you like, versus the normies. And it's really split by, again, the Ukraine situation and the Wuhan situation. And I've talked about that at length. But, you're really continuing to see this split in the collective. What the normies see, what the free thinkers see, and really this inability for both to really communicate or bridge this divide. And we're seeing this split with the Bidens too. So while we have son Biden embroiled in a major investigation in the U.S. and at the heart of the media establishment imploding, we also have his father still in office as president, giving speeches, and in fact, even making more powerful speeches, such as what he did yesterday, talking about the New World Order. So that's something I've been talking about in past videos about the financial reset. That is at the heart of a New World Order. And sure enough, Joe Biden, Papa Biden, was talking about that yesterday. And again, we're not going to hear about this in the press. If you're waiting for the media to give you a huge update on the New World Order and the financial reset and how they want to change your lives, good luck. You're not going to get it. And in fact, we're just seeing more lies being exposed, with the New York Post on its cover the other day showing the photos of some of the 51 spies who lied. And 51 is an interesting number. I saw that pop up in another news story in the last couple of days, and I wish I could remember what it was, but it's not a number you see like 33 or 9/11 or 3/22, today's date. But, I've been seeing this 51. And again, I wish I remember what stories this was in and if this has any significance. But I'm getting on a tangent. It's really come to light that the 51 American spies, or those in the intelligence deep state, who said, oh, no, the laptop, was Russian disinformation. The New York Times has now done a complete 180. So they listened to those spies, and not only did they not report on Hunter Biden's laptop and the contents, but they smeared anyone who brought it up as well. They smeared, blackballed, censored. The New York Post got banned from Twitter and Facebook, and the New York Times did absolutely nothing to defend its brethren on this. So, the fourth estate not operating as a natural check and balance in our system, and in fact being really splintered there as well. That is turned around with the New York Times coming out and saying, no, the laptop, it's authentic. There's something to it. And I was wondering, why did they do this about turn? And I was researching a little bit. And it's almost like you really have to go into the netherworlds of Getter and Gab and Telegram to find an alternative universe of news these days. And it turns out there's a fellow by the name of Jack Maxey. Again, never heard of him either till a few days ago, who... I think he's in the war room with Steve Bannon. And again, it's not something I really listen to. I follow I follow when something comes up of interest. I'm not sitting there listening to, I think I've heard maybe one episode in my life. It's not something I really turn to, but it has really become apparent that this Jack Maxey has been the driving force in confronting the New York Times and presenting them with enough evidence on the Hunter Biden laptop that the New York Times had absolutely no choice but to publish something on this, giving it relevancy and not questioning And not, I'm not saying that this was some inauthentic, disinformation campaign by the Russians. They're totally backpedaling on that whole thing. And last Wednesday published an article giving it credence for the first time in 17 months. And so now, people are really outraged at the New York Times about this. And it's just a little sample here, this email about what the potential that's in it. And I've heard from other people who saw some of the contents. I'm not going to repeat it because I don't know if it's true. I have no reason to doubt it, but I don't know for sure. I haven't seen it. And second of all, it is so gross and graphic. I'm really uncomfortable even talking about it right now. But this little email, Biden's very concerned he has AIDS and may have passed it to the mother and daughter. And it's very disgusting and unseemly. But it was this kind of information that was presented to the New York Times where they felt like, and now you have Truth Social coming out with Trump, and you have Gab and Getter giving Twitter a run and Facebook a run for their money, that the New York Times had no choice but to publish something. And it has really come at a time when not a very good time for them. So they had to row back on that. And then last Friday on the 18th, they had an editorial that people should be able to express unpopular positions without being canceled. Well, again, this goes against completely what they've been saying the last, 5 years or so, that, that Facebook and Twitter do need to edit, and they do need to act like publishers and edit what's on there and show discrimination what they publish and don't publish. And so now they're rescinding that position and saying people should be able to express unpopular quote unquote positions. This comes to after, and I put it in my last couple videos, Matthew Rosenberg, one of their reporters, was caught on tape by Project Veritas complaining about the woke newsroom and how it was this woke newsroom culture and the people were ruining their coverage. And that was a big black eye. And so what happened was, I noticed last week, I subscribed to the New York Post, and one day last week, in the middle of all of this, came a sample New York Times paper. And I've subscribed to the New York Times on and off for about 30 years now, and they've never given anything away free, certainly not a free paper. So to me, this showed me that they are really running scared here, and that this is starting to really affect them on a deeper way and starting to impugn their reputation in a way that they were willing to gamble with the last 5 years when they thought they were on the winning side. And there is an element in the newsroom who probably really did believe all of this stuff too. I'm not debating that, but there's now damage control here by giving away this newspaper. And, at the heart of it is Hunter Biden. And we're going to be taking a look at his Van 2 chart here and what that may or may not show. But again, about this split, while we have everybody debating Hunter Biden and the grotesque illegalities that he was documenting on his laptop, his father is in the office holding the highest state as president. And yesterday, and he's not doing about it quietly, yesterday he gave a speech to the Business Roundtable with CEOs in the energy world, food, agriculture, key things here, key companies, and said that there is going to be a new world order. It hasn't happened in a while, and America is going to lead it. And I'm going to read the graph that came ahead of it, because it's an interesting flow in his thoughts. As one of the top military people said to me in a secure meeting the other day, about 60 million people died between 1900 and 1946. So presumably the 2 world wars. And since then, we've established a liberal world order, and that hadn't happened in a long while. A lot of people dying, but nowhere near the chaos. And now is a time when things are shifting. There's going to be a new world order out there, and we've got to lead it. That's America. And America has got to unite the rest of the free world into doing it. So, if there's any question about a financial reset, Joe Biden just kind of confirmed it here. And again, he's speaking to CEOs. That's the heart of our economy, which goes to the heart of the financial system. So this isn't a stretch to think that, this is exactly, they know exactly what they're doing. And in between the yoo-hoo, woo-hoo sandwich is the New World Order. I mean, nothing is that much of a crisis in Ukraine that didn't stop Joe Biden from speaking to Business Roundtable leaders yesterday and not talking about concrete ways to improve price pressures and supply chains and potential food shortages, but to talk about this New World Order. Russia and other major countries that produce grain are temporarily suspending those exports of grain. And Russia, I saw the other day, is to temporarily suspend fertilizer exports. So to grow, to have mass agriculture, to have mass farming, to have this mass food production, you need copious amounts of fertilizer to ensure that you're getting so much corn bushels per acre. And without fertilizer, farmers are gonna have a really hard time meeting those kind of quotas and meeting yields, meeting production targets, and so forth. And to give you a sign too that we're entering in duct tape times. I've heard that expression, duct tape times. You're starting to see this. I mean, just a cursory look at my Facebook feed. I've got friends in Australia, and it's summer now, and late summer, and they're complaining that there's no pool salt. A lot of them have their own pools, and someone writes, FFS, pool salt seems to be the new toilet paper. Can't get it anywhere. This is from one of my friends on our Facebook page, and she had comments saying basically the same thing. And so it's these essentials that you never think about that are kind of at the backbone or the very basic here of production, way of life, sanitary conditions, and so forth and so on. Global fertilizer reserves as low as we've ever seen, says, a CEO of a chemical industry. So again, it's the basics, which could lead to this duct tape times, that you're not seeing enough of the basics. We're going to really have to rely on our own, crude measures. In the meantime, all the concerns about punishing Russia and, the West and corporatism is certainly doing its best to cancel it. How much of it is really being hurt? So there was a lot of concern about Russia defaulting on its debt, and oh my gosh, and the banks are going to really make it impossible for them to meet their payments. And lo and behold, Russia says it made its $117 million payment. So it didn't default. So, somebody's either really exaggerating here or Putin is in on this big joke. I'm not really sure which. But Russia did not default. And in fact, if you read the story, and I'm pulling it from the New York Post here, JP Morgan Chase and Company, the correspondent bank Russia used to send the payment to Citigroup, said it had processed the funds, according to Bloomberg. It then sent the money to Citi after receiving approval from the Biden administration. The Post has contacted JP Morgan and Citibank seeking comments. So here you have two of the biggest Federal Reserve banks involved in making sure this debt payment happens. And of course, they probably have to. It's probably tangled up with a lot of other deals and so forth and so on, and would create a really negative domino effect for them. And the Biden administration signed off on it. So, while we're saying one thing, we're doing another thing. And then this story came out. Russia's share bank says sanctions limiting some forex transfers in Russia and abroad. So if you read that headline, it sounds like, ooh, the sanctions are limiting some foreign exchange transfers. But again, and this is a Reuters story, again, as with everything, you have to keep reading beyond that headline, and you find out that they're actually, while they're limiting that, they're not limiting other foreign exchange transactions like the Japanese yen and the Swiss franc. So, this headline could very well have said, Russia's share bank said sanctions are not limiting some foreign exchange bank transfers, Furthermore, if you read the story, it really does confirm here, and again, I'm taking it from Reuters, so they're more trustworthy than most when it comes to the financial news. They say here Moscow and Beijing are working to establish cooperation between their respective financial messaging systems. Russia's SWIFT alternative, the system for transfer of financial messages, should enable the flow of domestic interbank traffic. So again, this story knocking on its head, this idea, oh, Russia will be excluded from the SWIFT system. Oh my God, and I had been hearing for a while that they had been developing their own SWIFT system as well as China. And sure enough, I've seen more confirmation here than I have anywhere else, coming from Reuters. And again, I'm still going to treat Reuters as pretty much fairly good when it comes to financial news. I think they've lost a lot of credibility, but I think when it comes to financial news, I still think they're better than most. And I'm going to take that. I take that is accurate information from them. So again, you're not seeing this reflected in the LinkedIn corporate world. Ukraine refuses to surrender Mariupol. And here, this is our top stories here, how you can support Ukraine. And so the corporatism and rallying behind Ukraine continues without taking in any regard the setbacks that Ukraine has had. So, it was Zelensky who approached the Russians about some kind of an offer, and then he rejected it. But, usually it's the weaker person who's making the first offer. And what the problem here with all this too is that, the PR campaign is so successful that Ukraine is going to be a victim ultimately of that success. Because again, what the Western media deep state is doing, these deep public relation campaigns that are so well thought out and so organized and so engineered, as I have contended in my earlier video, what they're doing is they're trying to sway public perception to win the war. But the actual reality on the ground is showing something very different, and Ukraine could be a real victim of this. We could be setting Ukraine up for even a more going down the primrose path even more, where they then read all the public relations, news, and they really do think that, oh, I'm going to really stick my heels in. I'm not going to accept any Russian offer. And again, they're going to get completely screwed over. It's that old saying, don't read your press cuttings, don't read your own press, don't, if you're a prominent person, it's like, don't read your reviews. Don't get caught up in the hype about yourself, because then you start believing it, and then you start believing you're invincible. And, I'm kind of afraid that's what's happening with Ukraine here with all this. You see major corporations moving in lockstep again. And again, I've touched on it, but, it's not stopping. PricewaterhouseCoopers, the chair here, throwing their support behind Ukraine. Larry Fink, BlackRock. And I mean, if you look at the text, even without reading the words, if you look at the format and the layout, it even resembles each other. And the formatting is very important when you're presenting things. A screenplay is going to have a certain look to it. Even without reading the words, you can just tell by looking at the forms on the page that if this was written by a person who knows how to write screenplays or not. I ghostwrite, I do some writing, and it's like, you can look at something and you can just tell if it has a look that an editor is going to like or not, or going to take at face value, going, yeah, this person, at least what I'm getting, this person sort of knows how the game works. And it's like, this is so, it's almost the same PR company writing this stuff. All to hide the fact and obfuscate the fact that, our financial system is coming to near a breaking point. And I say near a breaking point, this can go on for another 2 years yet, and as long as wealth advisors and brokers and, these guys who, that's all they do for a living is talk the talk, they seem like they're still talking the talk, and they seem like they're really backing it up with, there's still a lot of money out there and there's liquidity rushing to it and there's going to be waves of money coming to the market. So I say near a breaking point. This could go on for another couple of years, really. But, it's something people are, it's harder to rationalize something like this. Stock market prices going up, and yet real earnings and dividend yield are falling. Look at that disparity. That's harder and harder to argue to clients. In the meantime, the U.S. is, keep sending money to the Ukraine. And this was March 16th. Biden, again, he's still in office, even though his son is living another alternative reality, announced another $800 million in security assistance, bringing the total to $1 billion in just the past week, and a total of $2 billion since the start of the Biden administration. The assistance will take the form of direct transfers of equipment, and you can see, and I'm not going to read all this, but look at the long list of things they're giving. 25,000 helmets to, explosive ordnance disposal and demining equipment. Okay, so the military-industrial complex is being fed here. They're nice and happy at a time when Zelensky has banned political parties and he's banning 11 broadcasters. At a time when he's doing this, the U.S. is still sending money in the name of democracy. So, these are, love them or hate them, again, you're not going to hear any of this in the mainstream narrative about what a superstar he is and what a hero and a man of the people. That he too, like Putin has been accused of doing, is taking very anti-democratic measures. And in a slight plot twist here, it's not just Eastern Ukraine that is identifying and wants to be part of Russia, but now we're getting some of this in this subcarpathian Ukraine region on the western edge here, which borders Hungary. And I'm not going to get into the whole history of it because I don't know it all. I do know, I don't have it memorized. Let's just put it that way. It is incredibly complicated with this land going back and forth between the Austro-Hungarian Empire and Russia. And, it highlights that none of this is simple or straightforward as the memes suggest. And so we have Petro Getsko. He's chairman of the Russian community in this Transcarpathian region, on video saying that the community is officially supporting the decision of the Russian Federation in the Ukraine. I don't know what that is. Sorry about that typo. Let me just delete that now. Of the Russian Federation in the Ukraine in the context of acquiring peace in Ukraine and its federalization, we propose Western Ukraine to become Carpathian Rus, which is old Russia. Basically, that's what that means. So it's a real plot twist to the narrative that we're getting. They want to be with Russia now. And this guy goes into the history a little, and I'm not going to get into it, but, he does say, many of his people were killed at the hand of Ukrainians, blah, blah, blah. Again, none of this is simple. This is a complex, checkered history that the West knows nothing about, yet, that does not stop in a blink of an eye. The LinkedIn corporatism from, again, inserting itself. And I should say the corporatism, that's a phrase from Mussolini's fascist government, where you have the society and the economy really coalescing, with businesses all on board. And you're seeing more and more of this. And you're seeing more and more of this corporatism in the Catholic Church. So new stuff has come to light that the Catholic, what I have found curious through the whole lockdowns is how the Catholic Church remained closed at a time when people needed the church more than ever. And they just quickly followed orders. And I have to say that really surprised me at the time. And then again, new stuff has come to light that J.B. Pritzker, the governor of Illinois, and Cardinal Blas Kupik were in close contact amid the pandemic. And that the Chicago Sun-Times, which is a very liberal, woke newspaper, got the documents and wanted to filed a Freedom of Information Act. They wanted to see the communication between the governor and the church. And I thought that was incredible that they would even take that step to do that. That's not the kind of reporting they usually do. So that to me was very interesting. They even went that far to do it. And the article, I have to say, was very disappointing and distressing because it showed a level of sycophantic behavior that really shocked me. That the Catholic Church has really no backbone anymore, and that he's not just cooperating, but he's bending over backwards to close things down, and he's going after priests, the cardinal, and it shocked me the level of complicity with this and how willing he was to sacrifice the church and the spiritual aspect of Catholicism for a questionable narrative at the time, and again, these are educated men. But Cardinal Kupek was really revealed in this story, and I really suggest you Google the whole thing and read it for yourself. And again, he was intimidating. He was threatening priests who were speaking out and who wanted to hold mass and so forth and so on. And really just bending over backward in, kissing the finger of, Pritzker, when, these are men of God. God is the in the hierarchy, that God's law is supreme, or so I thought they believed, and their behavior really counteracts that. And again, to some of you, this is no surprise, or it's like, yeah, what's new with the Catholic Church? To me, this still surprised me. His predecessor, Francis George, did show independence, but that was a different time. That was before the 2020s, it was before the transit field that we're in. In the sudden death series, in the category that I've been running here, SarahBeth Hartlage is the latest young person to die, 36-year-old MD from working in Louisville, Kentucky, and died suddenly and unexpectedly. Louisville COVID response leader, Dr. SarahBeth Hartlage, has died unexpectedly. She is the self-anointed COVID vaccine queen, and her program in Louisville was responsible for 120,000 shots in arms. She was responsible. She was a cheerleader. I mean, you look at her Twitter feed. A few days before she died, she's on the airplane going to some event, I think in Florida, with her mask on, and proudly displaying it with that, look in her eye. I mean, look at those eyes. We don't know what she died of. There is some pushback with people wanting to know what she exactly died of, but, was all for Ukraine, singing, drumming that drum beat. And, her post, March 12th, just a few days before she died, you don't have to be a scientist, physician, or epidemiologist to see that this graph shows a bad situation in Hong Kong. Countries with low vaccine density and those relying on non-mRNA vaccines like Sinovac are struggling. Okay, but she had the vaccine and she had the booster, probably more than one booster, I'm guessing, and gave it to other people, and she died. So, there's no... What now? How do you explain all of this? I thought her interest, all things Disney, was interesting. It's very MK Ultra, but I'm not saying she was MK Ultra. It shows a certain mindset. When I hear people going, I love Disney, and Disney fanatics, that tells me something about them. Usually, not all the time, but that is a certain mindset. That is a certain person who is ripe for a certain narrative of life and a certain belief system. And all of this, again, is, part of the, woohoo sandwich that we're in, to cover up, possibly, again, the amount of corruption in the U.S. government right now, in our political system. And all roads seem to be leading to Hunter Biden, who has this name Hunter, which is he hunting or is he hunted? Was he hunting? And now he's hunted. It's an interesting name. And here's a picture of his more reform days. And again, this kind of wild-eyed Look, he has. Here's his chart. I have to be really a word of caution here. He's got a rodent rating of an X in terms of reliability. So usually that means there's no time. That's why it's the X. So it limits what we can see on Human Designer Band 2. You cannot get an accurate read on color and tone up here. You can't do that. I would be guessing. I just please to ignore these numbers up here to some degree, because I don't know what they are, and nobody does unless you have an accurate birth time. And I've looked around, and there's nothing on that. You can only really try to guess and go through, and I did. I went through the whole day on, when was he born? February 4th here. So I went through the whole day on the Band 2 system, and there's a way you can do this. There's arrows going back, and there's back and forward arrows to keep going, and it will ching, you'll hear a little ding when there's a new change in the chart, and you'll see something flash up here. So you see this one is highlighted. So that's really a great feature in Band 2. You can go back, forth, back, and I started at midnight. 1 minute past, and then I just went forward and just kept going through the dings to see what was changing, and tons changes up here, but not much changes on the profile or the fact he is a generator with these centers defined. So that did not change through the course of the day. So I feel fairly confident talking about that a little bit. The profiles change several times as they do during a day. So he could have been a 2-5, a 2-4, or is it 2-4-2-5? 2-4-2-5, or 3-5, or at the very end of the day, 3-6. And I'm going to just say 3-5. This was the bulk of the day. So the 3-6, I think it was the last hour of the day or so. And there's a chance he could be that. There is a chance. For the sake of our argument, and just given the probability that it was in 3-5 most of the day, I'm going to go with 3-5 generator. And again, the generator did not change. These channels did not change. The lines will change. You'll get this change in line, and of course, color and tone is going to change. So that's useless information for us. But what didn't change is his sun in gate 13. That did not change all day. And that is the gate of the listener, the fellowship of man. So the gate of the listener, he was in all these different talks. He was in all of these different meetings. He was listening, and throughout this whole thing, there's no defined throat. So the ability for this guy to keep secrets is incredibly high. And the ability to give out information and parse that out is also incredibly high. These open throats have an amazing gift of, in very succinct ways, just summing up a situation. And they're quite intuitive and can really get to the point. And you can see here, he does not have one throat gate. Not only is this open, he does not have one gate. And that was pretty much the whole day that he did not have this. So if it did come up, there was one gate and one gate. This is a guy who can keep a secret, But you do have this split, this cut from the head to the life force here. So there is a disconnect, there is a split here. And that can cause a lot of destabilization. There's a destabilizing quality to some of this. And I would say an imbalance in energy. There's something that you could see through the drug use and, everything like that. But the gate of the listener, the fellowship of man, universal ideas and values in an ordered framework that inspires humanistic cooperation. Well, there was cooperation, all right. And maybe at the time he did think a lot of this was humanistic, dealing with Chinese communists and so forth. Maybe he did. We don't know the whole motivation. We don't know. But this was the sun in his mind, Sun on the mind side, I should say, in this gate. We don't know the line for sure, but if I'm going with the 3-5 or 3-6, you could look at it either way. I mean, if he's the 3-5 or 3-6, he would have this 3 here, and he has it. And it's in detriment here. Pessimism exalted to an art form. Whereas art, it may have the opposite effect. Satire, where the rightness of suspicion can inspire satire. In exaltation, a lack of trust that can only be transformed through concrete evidence, openness that is conditioned by suspicion and seeks evidence. So I'm going to just let that, I'm just going to let that sink in here. It also could be line 2 if he was born very early in the day. There's a chance this is line 2, where again you have the gate of the listener, fellowship of man, line 2, bigotry. And again, this is detriment, the obsessive belief that the highest ideals cannot be embraced by the lowest forms. My, oh my. An extremely difficult position where even the highest ideals provide rationalization for hatred. A role of openness so narrow that there is practically no one worth listening to. Wow. On the body side, his son is in gate 1, and it was in gate 1 all day. And again, the line will have changed. I'm just pulling line 6 here. You can ignore that. I mean, if he's 3-5, which I'm going for, I don't know why I have line 6 here, but let's leave the line out. Let's just look at Sun, gate 1, the gate of self-expression, the creative. Creation as a primal force. The energy potential to manifest, inspiration without limitation. And I mean, certainly you could see this in his nascent art career, which he has been lambasted for time and time again. This, how he, used art as a way to get over the drugs and to rehabilitate his life to some extent, very late in the game. And, people are going, oh, cynically, this is, he's using this to raise money for his, father and the Democratic Party. That might be true. I don't know. It very well could be true given what we've seen. But, when I see this, it does show that there's something deeper there to that, there is something to that for this guy. And that maybe had he followed this more on the body side, this gate of self-expression, instead of, being dragged into circles and circuits, that did take advantage of this listening quality, things might have been a little bit different for him. That this is a huge part of his life that it looks like he's ignored up until, recently. The creative, there is something there. So just to look at what has happened the last week, I'm not doing any of this justice because, again, we're just caught between so many huge stories here. And again, we still have people in masks. People are still wearing masks. You have the mask zombies out there. And to someone like myself, it's just, I look at them as zombies. It's like the zombie apocalypse still. And I do look at it as child abuse at this point, putting masks on kids, and there's this split here. There's a real split. And I'm not even pretending to, be, I'm not even hiding how I feel about this at this point. I definitely am on this free thinker side to things. And what if you're too caught up into the system and wearing this mask, you're blinded to a lot of things going on. It is a blinding mechanism. It is a mask after all. And I do think there is a link between covering a mouth to covering your eyes and vice versa. It's a limit. It's a limitation on your senses. It's a limitation on your breath, and we get we get spiritual truths. We find spirit through our breath, that's what yoga's about. there's a link between the breath and spirituality and our consciousness. And our consciousness is this ability to receive information. So, you're cutting things off here. So, we're living in this environment where so much is coming to light, new stuff coming to light, things being exposed, truths being revealed, and there's a huge faction of our society and collective that just cannot see it. And, this was in the paper today, getting back again, drawing out big picture, going out big picture. We are at this time of transition. We are at the time of the end of the cross of planning, which says it in the name. It was an, 400 plus era of planning and distribution and logistics and, organization, and the nation state and these, organizing principles that could allow, your bagel, produced in New York City to travel to get to you in Chicago or, in, the heart of the hills of Kentucky or, being able to travel at a moment's notice on an airplane and, all these organizing principles, again, I don't know if this is really all true. This is part of the story, but I'll tell you, it's certainly becoming evident to me that we are in a breakdown, that things are not working, even though we have more people smarter than ever and college educated and professional people. And this story really brings that home. This was in the New York Post again today. I do read more than the New York Post. It's true. It's just, I do get a hard copy of it. And that helps me just kind of form my thoughts, I suppose. But a homeless bungle. So the city of New York has 25,000 apartments for homeless people. And they could solve, it turns out, they could solve their homeless population problem in New York if they were using it optimally. So despite having 25,000 apartments, 10% of those are still open. So about 2,500 apartments are still vacant. Okay. So they're still not filled. And basically, if they were filled, this would get people off the streets. Now, again, I know that might be a really superficial answer to this homeless problem. But my point is, we've got the brightest minds. We've got all this prosperity to have 25,000 apartments. Okay? And some are still empty. 10% are still empty, because of bureaucratic nightmares. And this article details the bureaucracy that makes it impossible to take all those people sleeping on subways, in subway cars, on the streets, and urinating on the sidewalk and put them in these homes. And it just shows you this limitation of the time we're living in, that, the materialism is high. The materialism is at such, we are so organized to have built all this and create it. And you have, government functions to deal with nothing but this all day. And there's still people sleeping on subway cars, because it's breaking down. It's breaking down. And, we see this and we're in the middle of it. And today is March 22nd, 322 in the US. That's how we date things, with the month and then the day. And Cosmic Doorways, talks about, this is Skull and Bones Day. And that's a secret society in Yale. And they are seen as the secret people kind of running the world. And that usually they will organize some big conspiracy event around this time of year to control things. I don't know if that's true or not. I'm just noting the significance of this date. And I do know that in the Catholic Church in ancient times, this used to be the old Christmas. This used to be the day of birth. This is when, Jesus the baby was born. And actually Christmas was, seen as the time that, he died. So we've got this kind of reversed. So there is this sense of renewal. This is true resurrection. This is being born again. And I do want to leave you with that thought that, yes, there is so much truth coming to light. It is not pretty. It can get you down. It's very distressing on a physical level to be dealing with this, but just a reminder that our souls are forever expansive and free. And that's what we should be tapping into, and that's what this human design band 2 is about. Like the souls, you get a reading on your soul. We look at the mind, we look at the soul, and then we look at the body, and, to be in touch with your soul, and these systems help you be in touch with your soul. It helps you get into, to push out this outside interference and get really at the heart of what your soul wants to do, where your soul wants to go, what your soul wants to look at. And I want to just leave you with that. So thank you very much for joining me. I think it's a little bit shorter than what I've been doing. I hope so anyway. I'm going to leave it there. Thank you very much again for joining me. Please like, subscribe, share, and comment. You can always send me emails. I'll put it all in the box below. And again, thank you for your feedback, especially to someone who corrected me. Yes, I know it's not Shane Warney now. It's Shane Warne. I was listening to those Cockney guys. I was talking about Warney. And that's stuck in my head. So anyway, I appreciate all your feedback and everything. Thank you very much. Wishing you a wonderful day. Bye-bye.